The German soldier was dying. Captain Robert Llewellyn could see that from across the tent. The man was lying on a stretcher, blood soaking through the blanket. Too much blood. The kind of blood loss that meant internal damage. Stomach wound. Maybe liver. Maybe intestines. Probably all three. Llewellyn had seen this before. Had seen men die from wounds like this. They did not die fast. They died slow, painfully, screaming, begging. It took hours, sometimes days, and there was nothing anyone could do, except maybe ease the pain, make them comfortable, let them go. That was what Llewellyn usually did. That was what any doctor did when the wound was too severe, when survival was impossible. You did not waste resources, did not waste time. You moved on to the next patient, the one you could save. That was war. That was medicine. That was the job. But this was different. This man was not British. This man was German. This man was a Nazi. And the British soldiers standing around the stretcher did not want him to die comfortably. They wanted him to die painfully. They wanted him to suffer. They wanted revenge. Llewellyn understood. He did not agree, but he understood. These soldiers had lost friends, had watched their brothers die, had seen what the Germans did, had seen the destruction, the bombs, the bodies, the burned cities. They hated the Germans, hated every single one. And now there was a German lying on a stretcher bleeding to death in their camp, and they wanted to watch. Sergeant William Harris walked up to Llewellyn. Harris was 30 years old, from Liverpool, good soldier, loyal, tough. Harris said, "Doc, we found this one in a ditch 3 miles out. He was crawling, trying to get away. We thought about leaving him, but Captain Mitchell said, 'Bring him in. Let the doc decide.' So here he is. What do you want to do?" Llewellyn looked at the German. The man was young, maybe 20, maybe younger. His face was pale, sweating. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. Not moving, not speaking, just staring. Llewellyn said what happened to him. Harris said, "Looks like shrapnel. Stomach. He has been bleeding for hours. Maybe longer." Llewellyn said, "Why did you bring him here?" Harris said, "Because Captain Mitchell wanted to know if he has information." Llewellyn said, "He is dying. He is not going to talk." Harris shrugged. He said then, "Let him die. We have our own wounded. Use your time on them, not on him." Harris walked away, left Llewellyn standing there, staring at the German, thinking. Llewellyn was a doctor, had been a doctor for 15 years, had taken an oath. First, do no harm, save lives, all lives. It did not matter if the patient was British or German, friend or enemy, soldier or civilian. A life was a life, and a doctor saved lives. That was the oath. That was the job. That was what Llewellyn believed. But standing here looking at this dying German, Llewellyn was not sure. Not sure if the oath applied to enemies. Not sure if saving a Nazi was the right thing. Not sure if he could even save him. The wound was bad, very bad. Surgery was the only option, and surgery required time, resources, anesthesia, blood. Things Llewellyn did not have a lot of. Things that could be used on British soldiers instead. Soldiers who deserved it. Soldiers who were not the enemy. Llewellyn thought about walking away, about letting the German die, about saving his resources for men who mattered, but he could not. He was a doctor, and doctors did not choose who lived and who died based on nationality. They chose based on medicine, based on need, based on the oath. Llewellyn walked to the stretcher, knelt down, looked at the German. The German looked back. His eyes were blue, clear, intelligent. He was scared. Llewellyn could see it, could see the fear, the pain, the desperation. The German said something in German. Llewellyn did not understand. He said, "Do you speak English?" The German nodded weakly. He said yes, a little. "Please, help me. I do not want to die." Llewellyn said, "What is your name?" The German said, "Heinrich. Heinrich Muller." Llewellyn said, "Heinrich, I need to look at your wound. I need to see how bad it is. Heinrich nodded. Llewellyn pulled back the blanket, pulled up Heinrich's shirt, saw the wound. It was worse than he thought. Much worse. A piece of shrapnel had entered just below the ribs, had torn through the stomach, had exited through the back. Llewellyn could see the entry wound, could see the torn flesh, could see the intestines. They were exposed, damaged, leaking. This was not a wound you survived without surgery, without a hospital, without proper equipment, and even with all that, the odds were bad, very bad. Llewellyn looked at Heinrich. Said Heinrich, "Your wound is very bad. I do not know if I can save you." Heinrich said, "Please, try. I have a family, a wife, a daughter. Please." Llewellyn did not respond. He stood up, walked to the other side of the tent, thought about what to do. Captain Michael Mitchell walked in. Mitchell was Llewellyn's commanding officer, 40 years old, career soldier, hard man. No nonsense. Mitchell said, "Doc, what is the situation?" Llewellyn said the German has a severe abdominal wound, shrapnel, stomach and intestines damaged. He needs surgery, extensive surgery. Mitchell said, "Can you save him?" Llewellyn said, "Maybe. If I operate now, if I have the right equipment, if he does not go into shock, if infection does not set in. Maybe." Mitchell said, "That is a lot of ifs." Llewellyn said, "Yes, sir, it is." Mitchell said, "And if you operate on him, you will be using time and resources on a German. Time and resources that could be used on our men." Llewellyn said, "Yes, sir." Mitchell said so. "Why would you do that?" Llewellyn said, "Because I am a doctor, sir. I save lives." Mitchell said he is the enemy. Llewellyn said he is a human being. Mitchell stared at him. He said, "Doc, I am not ordering you to let him die, but I am not ordering you to save him either. This is your choice, your decision. Whatever you choose, I will support. But think carefully. Our men are watching. They will not understand. They will not forgive." Llewellyn said, "I know, sir." Mitchell nodded. He walked out, left Llewellyn alone with Heinrich, alone with the choice. Llewellyn walked back to the stretcher, looked at Heinrich. Heinrich was weaker now. His breathing was shallow. His skin was gray. He was dying. Llewellyn thought about his oath, about the promise he made when he became a doctor. First, do no harm. Save lives. All lives. Llewellyn thought about his daughter. Her name was Emma. She was 7 years old. She lived in London with her mother. Llewellyn had not seen her in 2 years, had not held her, had not heard her laugh. He thought about Emma every day, wondered if she remembered him, wondered if she was safe, wondered if he would ever see her again. Llewellyn looked at Heinrich. Heinrich had a daughter too. Heinrich had said so. A daughter who was waiting for him. A daughter who did not know her father was dying in a tent in France. A daughter who would grow up without him, just like Emma might grow up without Llewellyn. Llewellyn thought about that, about daughters, about fathers, about families torn apart by war. He thought about how war made enemies of people who had no reason to hate each other, people who just wanted to go home, people who had families, people who were human. Llewellyn made his decision. He would operate. He would try to save Heinrich. Not because Heinrich was German, not because Heinrich was the enemy, but because Heinrich was a human being, a father, a man who wanted to live, and Llewellyn was a doctor, and doctors saved lives. That was the job. That was the oath. That was what mattered. Llewellyn called his assistant, Corporal James Price. Price was 25 years old, medical assistant, good with his hands, steady, reliable. Price walked over. He said, "Yes, Doc." Llewellyn said, "We are operating. Prep the table. Get the instruments. Sterilize everything. We need to move fast." Price stared at him. He said, "Doc, you are operating on the German." Llewellyn said, "Yes." Price said, "Doc, are you sure? The men will not like this." Llewellyn said, "I do not care what the men like. I care about saving lives. Now prep the table." Price hesitated. Then he nodded. He said, "Yes, Doc." He walked away, started preparing. Llewellyn looked at Heinrich. Said Heinrich, I am going to operate. I am going to try to fix your stomach. It will be painful. Very painful. We do not have anesthesia. We do not have morphine. You will feel everything. Do you understand?" Heinrich nodded. He said, "I understand. Thank you, doctor. Thank you." Llewellyn said, "Do not thank me yet. You might not survive." Heinrich said, "I know, but you are trying. That is enough." 2 British soldiers carried Heinrich to the operating table, laid him down, strapped his arms and legs, not gently, roughly. They did not look at Heinrich, did not speak to him, just strapped him down, walked away. Llewellyn washed his hands, put on gloves, picked up a scalpel, looked at Heinrich. Heinrich was staring at the ceiling, breathing fast, terrified. Llewellyn said, "Heinrich, this is going to hurt. A lot. Try not to move. Try not to scream." Heinrich said, "I will try." Llewellyn cut into the wound, opened it wider. Heinrich screamed, a raw animal scream. His body convulsed. The straps held. Llewellyn kept cutting, kept opening. Blood poured out. Llewellyn worked fast, found the damaged intestine, found the torn stomach, started repairing, stitching, clamping, stopping the bleeding. Heinrich kept screaming, kept thrashing. The straps held. Llewellyn did not stop, did not look up, just worked, just operated, just saved a life, one stitch at a time. Outside the tent, the British soldiers stood, listening to Heinrich scream, listening to the Germans suffer. Some of them smiled, some of them nodded. Good. Let him suffer. Let him feel pain. Let him know what he did to us. But some of them did not smile. Some of them looked uncomfortable, looked disturbed. They were hearing a man being tortured, a man screaming for mercy, and their doctor was the one doing it. Their doctor was operating without anesthesia. Their doctor was causing the pain. Some of the soldiers walked away, could not listen anymore, could not stomach it. Harris stayed. Harris watched the tent, listened to the screams, thought about what the doc was doing, thought about whether it was right, thought about whether saving an enemy made you a traitor. Harris did not know. He just knew the doc was doing something most men would not do, something most men could not do. Harris did not know if that made the doc a hero or a fool. He just knew the doc had more courage than anyone else in that camp, because the doc was doing what he believed was right, even when everyone else believed it was wrong. Heinrich survived the surgery, barely. Llewellyn closed the wound, stitched him up, bandaged him, moved him to a recovery cot in the corner of the tent. Heinrich was unconscious, breathing shallow, skin pale, pulse weak. Llewellyn did not know if he would wake up, did not know if the stitches would hold, did not know if infection would set in. Surgery was only the first step. Survival was the second. And survival required the body to fight, required the will to live, required luck. Llewellyn had done everything he could. Now it was up to Heinrich, and up to chance. Llewellyn walked out of the tent. His hands were shaking. His uniform was covered in blood. Heinrich's blood. German blood. Enemy blood. Llewellyn looked at his hands, at the blood, thought about what he had just done, thought about whether it was right, thought about whether he had made a mistake. He did not know. He just knew he was exhausted, physically, mentally, morally. He sat down on a crate, put his head in his hands, tried to breathe, tried to think, tried to understand what he had just done. Harris walked over. He stood in front of Llewellyn, did not say anything, just stood there. Llewellyn looked up, said what? Harris said, "The men are talking, Doc. They are not happy. They are saying you wasted time on a Nazi, time that could have been used on our wounded. They are saying you are a traitor." Llewellyn said, "I am not a traitor. I am a doctor." Harris said, "I know, Doc, but they do not see it that way. They see a Nazi getting treatment while British soldiers wait." Llewellyn said, "No British soldiers are waiting. Everyone who needs treatment has gotten it." Harris said, "The men do not care about facts, Doc. They care about feelings, and they feel betrayed." Llewellyn stood up. He said, "I did what I had to do. I took an oath. First, do no harm. Save lives. All lives. That includes Heinrich. Harris said the men do not care about oaths, Doc. They care about sides. And you just saved the wrong side. Llewellyn said there are no sides in medicine, only patients. Harris shook his head. He said, you are wrong, Doc. There are always sides, and you just picked the enemies. Llewellyn did not respond. He did not know what to say. Harris walked away, left Llewellyn standing there, alone, covered in blood, wondering if he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Heinrich woke up 12 hours later. Llewellyn was sitting next to his cot, monitoring his pulse, checking his breathing, making sure he was stable. Heinrich's eyes opened, slowly, painfully. He looked around, confused, disoriented. Then he saw Llewellyn. Recognition flickered in his eyes. He tried to speak. His voice was barely a whisper. He said, I am alive. Llewellyn said, yes, you are alive. Heinrich said, how? Llewellyn said, I operated. I repaired your stomach. I stopped the bleeding. You survived. Heinrich closed his eyes. A tear ran down his cheek. He said, thank you. Thank you, doctor. I thought I was going to die. Llewellyn said, you almost did. You are not out of danger yet. Your wound could get infected. You could go into shock. You need rest. You need to stay still. You need to let your body heal. Heinrich nodded weakly. He said, I will try. Llewellyn said, good. He stood up, started to walk away. Heinrich said, Doctor. Llewellyn stopped, turned around. Heinrich said, why did you save me? You are British. I am German. We are enemies. Why did you do it? Llewellyn looked at him. He said, because you asked me to. Because you have a daughter. Because you are a human being. Heinrich stared at him. He said, my men would not have done the same. If you were wounded, if you were dying, they would have let you die. They would have laughed. Llewellyn said, I am not your men. I am a doctor. Heinrich said, you are more than a doctor. You are a good man. Llewellyn did not respond. He walked away, left Heinrich alone, went back to his other patients, went back to his job. 2 days later, Captain Mitchell came to see Llewellyn. Mitchell said, Doc, we have a problem. Llewellyn said, what problem? Mitchell said, the men are refusing to work near the German. They say if he dies under your care, they will report you. They will say you murdered him. Llewellyn stared at him. He said, what? Mitchell said, the men believe you should have let him die. They believe saving him was treason. They think if he dies now, it proves they were right. Proves you wasted resources. Llewellyn said, that makes no sense. Mitchell said, it does not have to make sense. It just has to be what the men believe. And they believe it. Llewellyn said, so what do you want me to do? Mitchell said, keep him alive, Doc. Do whatever it takes. Because if he dies, the men will turn on you. They will make your life hell. They might even try to hurt you. Llewellyn said, are you threatening me, sir? Mitchell said, no. I am warning you. I cannot control what the men do. I can only tell you what they are thinking. And they are thinking if that Nazi dies, you killed him on purpose. Llewellyn said, that is insane. Mitchell said, maybe. But it is reality. So keep him alive, Doc. For your sake. Not for his. Llewellyn walked back to Heinrich's cot. Heinrich was awake, sitting up. His color was better. His breathing was steadier. He was recovering. Slowly, but recovering. Llewellyn checked his wound. It was healing. No signs of infection. The stitches were holding. Heinrich was going to survive. Llewellyn felt relief. Not because he cared about Heinrich, but because keeping Heinrich alive meant keeping himself safe. Llewellyn hated that. Hated that his safety depended on a Nazi's survival. Hated that he was being held hostage by his own soldiers. Hated that doing the right thing had put him in danger. But there was nothing he could do. He just had to keep Heinrich alive. Had to make sure he recovered. Had to protect himself by protecting his enemy. Heinrich said, Doctor, you look worried. Llewellyn said, I am fine. Heinrich said, no, you are not. What is wrong? Llewellyn hesitated. Then he said, My men are angry. They do not want you here. They want you dead. Heinrich said, I understand. I would feel the same if I were them. Llewellyn said, They are threatening me, saying if you die they will accuse me of murdering you. Heinrich's eyes widened. He said, They are using me as a weapon against you. Llewellyn said, Yes. Heinrich said, That is evil. Llewellyn said, That is war. Heinrich said, No. War is killing enemies. This is something else. This is cruelty. This is using suffering to hurt someone who tried to help. Llewellyn said, Welcome to humanity. Heinrich said, I am sorry, Doctor. I did not mean for this to happen. Llewellyn said, It is not your fault. You did not ask for this. You just asked to live. Heinrich said, Yes, and you gave me that. Now you are paying for it. Llewellyn said, Yes, I am. A British soldier walked into the tent. Private Andrew Thompson, 22 years old, from Manchester. Thompson walked straight to Heinrich's cot, stood over him, stared down at him. Heinrich stared back, did not move, did not speak. Thompson said, You are the Nazi the doc saved. Heinrich said, Yes. Thompson said, My brother died at Dunkirk, killed by Germans, by men like you. Heinrich said, I am sorry for your loss. Thompson said, Sorry does not bring him back. Sorry does not undo what you did. Heinrich said, I did not kill your brother. I was not at Dunkirk. Thompson said, You wore the same uniform. You followed the same flag. You are guilty. Heinrich said, If wearing a uniform makes me guilty, then you are guilty too. You wear a British uniform. Your country has killed Germans. Does that make you responsible for all their deaths? Thompson did not answer. He just stared. Then he said, You should be dead. Heinrich said, Maybe. But I am not. Thanks to your doctor. Thompson said the doc made a mistake. He should have let you die. We all wanted you to die. Heinrich said, I know. But he saved me anyway. That makes him braver than all of you. Thompson's face went red. He said, What did you say? Heinrich said, Your doctor has more courage than anyone in this camp. He did what he believed was right even when everyone hated him for it. That is bravery. What you are doing, standing over a wounded man, threatening him, that is cowardice. Thompson raised his fist, started to swing. Llewellyn grabbed his arm, stopped him. Llewellyn said, Private Thompson, leave. Now. Thompson turned around, looked at Llewellyn, said, You are defending him. You are defending a Nazi. Llewellyn said, I am defending a patient. Now leave before I report you to Captain Mitchell. Thompson pulled his arm free. He said, This is not over, Doc. You made a choice. Now you have to live with it. He walked out, left Llewellyn and Heinrich alone. Heinrich said, Doctor, I am making things worse for you. Maybe it would be better if I died. Llewellyn said, Do not say that. Heinrich said, I am serious. My survival is putting you in danger. If I die, your problems go away. Llewellyn said, If you die, my problems get worse. The men will accuse me of murdering you. Heinrich said, Then what do I do? Llewellyn said, You survive. You heal. You get strong. And then you leave. You go to a POW camp. You get away from here. And I get my life back. Heinrich said, And then what? Llewellyn said, Then we both forget this ever happened. Heinrich said, I will never forget this, Doctor. You saved my life. I owe you everything. Llewellyn said, You do not owe me anything. You just owe yourself. You owe your daughter. You owe your family. Stay alive for them, not for me. Heinrich nodded. He said, I will. I promise. I will stay alive. That night Llewellyn lay in his cot, stared at the ceiling, thought about what he had done, thought about Heinrich, thought about Thompson, thought about the men, thought about the hatred, the anger, the threats. He thought about his oath. First, do no harm. Save lives. All lives. He had followed his oath, had done what he believed was right, and now he was paying for it. Now his own men hated him. Now his safety depended on keeping a Nazi alive. Now he was trapped, trapped by his own morality, trapped by doing the right thing. Llewellyn wondered if it was worth it, wondered if saving Heinrich had been a mistake, wondered if maybe the men were right. Maybe he should have let Heinrich die. Maybe mercy was a luxury war could not afford. Maybe choosing sides was necessary. Maybe being a doctor was not enough. Maybe he had to be a soldier too. Llewellyn did not know. He just knew he was exhausted. He just knew he was alone. He just knew he had made a choice, and now he had to live with it. No matter what happened, no matter what the cost, Heinrich was recovering. Every day he was stronger. Every day his color improved. Every day his wound healed. Llewellyn checked on him 3 times a day, monitored his progress, changed his bandages, made sure infection did not set in. Heinrich was going to survive. That was good news for Heinrich. That was good news for Llewellyn. That meant Llewellyn would not be accused of murder. That meant Llewellyn might make it through this alive. But it also meant Heinrich was alert, awake, talking. And the more Heinrich talked, the more Llewellyn learned. The more he learned, the harder it became to see Heinrich as the enemy. Heinrich spoke English well, better than most Germans Llewellyn had met. Heinrich said he had studied in England before the war, had spent 2 years at Oxford, studied philosophy, met his wife there. She was German too, a student. They had fallen in love, married, moved back to Germany, had a daughter. Heinrich showed Llewellyn a photograph. It was creased, worn, stained with blood, but the image was clear. A woman, maybe 30 years old, dark hair, kind eyes. She was holding a little girl. The girl was maybe 5, blonde hair, big smile, holding a stuffed rabbit. Heinrich said her name is Anna, my daughter. She is 6 now. I have not seen her in 2 years, not since I was conscripted. Llewellyn stared at the photograph, at the little girl, at her smile. She looked like Emma, same age, same innocence, same trust in the world. Llewellyn handed the photograph back. He did not say anything, could not say anything. Heinrich said, "Do you have children, doctor?" Llewellyn nodded. He said yes. A daughter, Emma. She is 7. Heinrich said, "Then you understand. You understand why I want to live, why I need to live. Not for me, for her." Llewellyn said, "Yes, I understand." Heinrich said, "Doctor, can I ask you something?" Llewellyn said, "Yes." Heinrich said, "Why did the British soldiers bring me here? Why did they not just leave me in the ditch? Why did they not let me die?" Llewellyn said, "Captain Mitchell wanted to see if you had information. Intelligence." Heinrich laughed, a weak, painful laugh. He said, "Intelligence. I am a private. I know nothing. I was cannon fodder, sent to the front, told to fight, told to die. I do not know plans. I do not know strategies. I am nobody." Llewellyn said Mitchell did not know that. Heinrich said, "And now he does. And now I am still alive. And now you are in trouble because of me." Llewellyn said yes. Heinrich said, "I am sorry." Llewellyn said, "It is not your fault. You did not ask for this." Heinrich said, "No, but I am the cause. If I had died in the ditch, none of this would have happened. You would be safe. Your men would not hate you. Everything would be normal." Llewellyn said, "Maybe, but you would be dead." Heinrich said, "Yes, and maybe that would have been better, for everyone." Llewellyn said, "Do not say that." Heinrich said, "Why not? It is true. My survival is causing you pain. My life is making your life harder. Maybe my death would be a mercy." Llewellyn said, "Your death would not be a mercy. It would be a waste. You have a daughter. She needs you. That is what matters. Nothing else." Heinrich stared at him. He said, "You really believe that?" Llewellyn said, "Yes, I do." Heinrich said, "Then, you are a better man than most." Llewellyn said, "I am just a doctor." A new problem arrived the next day. The German POW camp was half a mile from the British field hospital. 200 German prisoners, most of them wounded, some of them dying. They were guarded by 30 British soldiers. The prisoners knew about Heinrich, knew that a German soldier had been operated on by a British doctor. knew that Heinrich was alive, and they wanted to see him, wanted to know if the British were treating him well, wanted to make sure he was not being tortured. The POW camp commander sent a message, a German sergeant named Klaus Weber. Weber was 40 years old, career soldier, tough, smart, loyal. Weber sent word that he wanted to speak to Captain Mitchell. Mitchell agreed. Weber came to the British camp. He brought 2 guards, British guards, not German. Weber was a prisoner. He had no authority, no power, but he had something else. He had 200 men who would follow him, who would listen to him, who would act if he told them to act. That gave him power. Mitchell knew it. So did Weber. Mitchell and Weber met in Mitchell's tent. Llewellyn was there. So was Harris. Weber spoke English. He said, "Captain Mitchell, I am here about the German soldier, the one your doctor operated on." Mitchell said, "What about him?" Weber said, "My men want to see him, want to make sure he is alive, want to make sure he is being treated properly." Mitchell said, "He is being treated properly. He is recovering. Your concern is noted." Weber said with respect, "Captain, that is not good enough. My men do not trust your words. They want proof. They want to see him." Mitchell said, "He is a patient. He is recovering. He cannot have visitors." Weber said, "Then we have a problem." Mitchell said, "What kind of problem?" Weber said, "If my men do not see proof that Heinrich is alive and well, they will assume he is dead. They will assume you killed him, and they will act accordingly." Mitchell said, "Are you threatening me, Sergeant?" Weber said, "I am informing you, Captain. My men believe that if Heinrich dies under your care, it is murder, and they will not let murder go unpunished." Mitchell said, "Your men are prisoners. They have no power." Weber smiled, a cold smile. He said, "Prisoners have power, Captain. We outnumber your guards 6 to 1. If we decide to act, there is nothing you can do to stop us." Mitchell leaned forward. He said, "If you act, I will have you all shot." Weber said, "Then you will have a massacre on your hands, and you will have to explain to your superiors why you killed 200 unarmed prisoners. Is that what you want, Captain?" Mitchell did not answer. He looked at Llewellyn. Llewellyn said, "Let him see Heinrich. Let Weber verify he is alive. Let him report back to his men. That solves the problem," Mitchell said. "And if Heinrich dies later, if infection sets in, if his wound reopens, what then?" Weber said, "Then Dr. Llewellyn better make sure that does not happen. Because if Heinrich dies, my men will assume it was murder, and they will take revenge." Llewellyn stared at him. He said, "You are using Heinrich as a hostage." Weber said, "No, doctor. You are using Heinrich as a hostage. You saved his life. Now you are responsible for it. If he dies, the blame is yours." Llewellyn said, "That is insane." Weber said, "That is war, doctor." Mitchell said, "Enough. Sergeant Weber, you may see Heinrich. You may verify he is alive. You may report back to your men. But that is all. If you or your men try anything, I will have you shot. Do you understand?" Weber said, "I understand, Captain. Thank you for your cooperation." Weber stood up, walked out, followed by his guards. Harris said, "Sir, this is bad." Mitchell said, "I know." Harris said, "The Germans are using Heinrich as leverage. If he dies, they riot. If they riot, we have to kill them. If we kill them, we are massacring prisoners." Mitchell said, "I know." Harris said so. "What do we do?" Mitchell said, "We keep Heinrich alive. We make sure nothing happens to him. We protect him." Harris said, "From who, sir?" "From our own men." Mitchell said, "Yes, from our own men. From infection. From bad luck. From everything. Because if Heinrich dies, we all pay the price." Harris said, "Sir, this is insane. One German private should not have this much power." Mitchell said, "He does not have power. We gave it to him. We gave it to him when we saved his life. Now we are stuck with him, and we better make sure he survives." Harris looked at Llewellyn. He said, "Doc, you really stepped in it." Llewellyn said, "I know." Harris said, "You saved one Nazi, and now everyone wants him dead or alive depending on which side they are on. The British want him dead, the Germans want him alive, and you are stuck in the middle." Llewellyn said, "Yes. That about sums it up." Harris said, "So, what are you going to do?" Llewellyn said, "I am going to keep him alive, because that is my job, that is my oath, and because if I do not, We all die. Harris shook his head. He said, Doc, you have the worst luck of anyone I have ever met. Weber came to see Heinrich. Llewellyn escorted him. Weber stood at Heinrich's cot, looked down at him, said Private Muller. Heinrich said, Sergeant Weber. Weber said, how are you? Heinrich said, I am alive. Thanks to this doctor. Weber looked at Llewellyn. He said, is this true? Did you operate on him? Llewellyn said, yes. Weber said, why? Llewellyn said, because he was dying. Weber said, he is the enemy. Llewellyn said, he is a patient. Weber stared at him. He said, you are an unusual man, doctor. Most men would have let him die. Llewellyn said, I am not most men. I am a doctor. Weber said, yes. And now you are a prisoner too. Llewellyn said, what? Weber said, you are a prisoner of your own choice. You saved Heinrich. Now you must keep him alive. If he dies, my men will kill you. If he lives, your men will hate you. You are trapped, doctor. Trapped by your own morality. Llewellyn said, I know. Weber said, then why did you do it? Llewellyn said, because it was the right thing to do. Weber said, the right thing is not always the smart thing. Llewellyn said, maybe. But it is still the right thing. Weber nodded. He said, I respect that, doctor. I do not understand it, but I respect it. He turned to Heinrich. Said, Private Muller, you are lucky. This man saved your life. Do not waste it. Heinrich said, I will not, Sergeant. Weber said, good. He walked out, left Llewellyn and Heinrich alone. Heinrich said, Doctor, you are in more danger than I thought. Llewellyn said, yes. Heinrich said, both sides are using me. The British want me dead. The Germans want me alive. And you are caught in the middle. Llewellyn said, yes. Heinrich said, what will you do? Llewellyn said, I will keep you alive. I will make sure you recover. I will transfer you to the POW camp. And then I will go back to my life. Heinrich said, and if I die before then? Llewellyn said, then I die too. Probably. Heinrich said, that is not fair. Llewellyn said, no, it is not. But it is reality. So do me a favor. Stay alive. Heinrich said, I will try, doctor. I will try very hard. That night Llewellyn lay in his cot, thought about everything that had happened, thought about Heinrich, thought about Weber, thought about Thompson, thought about the photograph, the little girl, Anna, Emma, 2 daughters, 2 fathers, 2 lives connected by one choice. Llewellyn thought about his oath. First, do no harm, save lives. He had saved Heinrich's life, but in doing so he had endangered his own, had endangered his men, had created a situation where everyone was a hostage, where everyone was trapped, where one man's survival determined the fate of hundreds. Llewellyn wondered if he had made a mistake, wondered if letting Heinrich die would have been easier, would have been simpler, would have been safer. But then he thought about the photograph, about Anna, about her smile, about how that smile would disappear if Heinrich died, about how Emma's smile would disappear if Llewellyn died, about how war destroyed smiles, destroyed families, destroyed everything. And Llewellyn thought maybe that was why he had saved Heinrich. Not because it was smart, not because it was safe, but because saving one life meant saving one smile, meant giving one little girl her father back. And maybe that was worth dying for. Maybe that was worth everything. Heinrich collapsed on the 7th day. Llewellyn was checking another patient when Price ran into the tent. Price said, Doc, you need to come now. It is the German. He is unconscious. Llewellyn dropped what he was doing, ran to Heinrich's cot. Heinrich was lying there, eyes closed, skin gray, breathing shallow, pulse racing. Llewellyn pulled back the blanket, checked the wound. The stitches had held, no bleeding, but Heinrich's abdomen was swollen, hard, hot to the touch. Infection, internal infection, the worst kind, the kind that killed, the kind that spread fast, the kind that required immediate intervention. Llewellyn said, Get me hot water, clean bandages, antiseptic, everything we have. Price said, Yes, Doc. He ran off. Llewellyn looked at Heinrich, thought about what this meant, thought about the British soldiers who wanted Heinrich dead, thought about the German POWs who would riot if Heinrich died, thought about himself, about how his life depended on this man surviving. Llewellyn pushed those thoughts away, focused. Heinrich was dying. That was all that mattered. Saving him was all that mattered. Llewellyn reopened the wound, cut through the stitches, opened Heinrich's abdomen. The smell hit him immediately. Rot, decay, death. The infection was severe, worse than Llewellyn had feared. The intestine had developed an abscess, a pocket of infected tissue. It was leaking, poisoning Heinrich's body, killing him from the inside. Llewellyn had to drain it, had to remove the infected tissue, had to clean the wound, had to do it fast, had to do it now. Price came back with supplies. Llewellyn did not waste time, did not hesitate. He cut, he drained, he cleaned. He removed every piece of infected tissue. He flushed the wound with antiseptic. He stitched it back up. He worked for 2 hours. 2 hours of cutting, draining, cleaning. 2 hours of fighting death. 2 hours of trying to save a man everyone wanted dead. When Llewellyn finished, he was exhausted, covered in blood, covered in infection, covered in the smell of death. But Heinrich was still alive, barely, but alive. Harris walked into the tent. He saw Llewellyn, saw the blood, saw Heinrich lying unconscious on the cot. Harris said what happened. Llewellyn said infection, internal abscess. I drained it. He should survive. Harris said should. Llewellyn said yes, should. There are no guarantees. Harris said Doc if he dies. Llewellyn said I know. If he dies, the Germans riot. If he dies, my men accuse me of murder. If he dies, I am finished. Harris said so. What do you do? Llewellyn said I pray. I monitor him. I do everything I can. And I hope it is enough, Harris said. And if it is not? Llewellyn said, then we all pay the price. Word spread fast. Heinrich had collapsed. Heinrich was dying. The British soldiers heard. Some of them smiled. Good. Let him die. Let the Doc pay for his treason. Let the Germans riot. Let everything fall apart. The German POWs heard. They gathered at the fence, 200 men, staring toward the British camp, waiting for news, waiting to see if Heinrich would live or die, waiting to see if they would have to act. Weber stood at the front. His face was hard, unreadable. He did not move, did not speak, just waited, just watched, just prepared. Mitchell called Llewellyn to his tent. Mitchell said, Doc, what is the situation? Llewellyn said Heinrich developed an infection. I operated. I drained the abscess. He is alive but critical. Mitchell said, will he survive? Llewellyn said, I do not know, sir. I did everything I could. Now it is up to him. Mitchell said, that is not good enough. Llewellyn said, it is all I have, sir. I am a doctor, not a miracle worker. Mitchell said, you better become one. Because if that German dies, we have a war inside our own camp. Llewellyn said, I know, sir. Mitchell said the Germans are at the fence, 200 of them, waiting. If Heinrich dies, they will riot. My men will have to shoot. And if they shoot, we will have dead prisoners. And if we have dead prisoners, I will have to explain to command why I massacred unarmed POWs. Do you understand, Doc? Llewellyn said, yes, sir. Mitchell said, so keep him alive. Do whatever it takes. I do not care if you have to sell your soul. Keep him alive. Llewellyn said, I will try, sir. Mitchell said, do not try. Do. Llewellyn walked out, walked back to Heinrich, sat down next to the cot, stared at the dying man, thought about everything that had led to this moment. One choice, one decision to save a life. And now hundreds of lives hung in the balance. Now Llewellyn's life hung in the balance. Now everything depended on whether one German private survived. Llewellyn thought about the absurdity of it, the insanity, the impossibility. But he did not have time to think. He had work to do. He had a life to save. He had a catastrophe to prevent. Heinrich did not wake up for 2 days. 2 days of waiting. 2 days of monitoring. 2 days of praying. Llewellyn barely slept, barely ate. He sat next to Heinrich's cot, checked his pulse, checked his breathing, checked his temperature, changed his bandages, cleaned his wound, did everything possible, everything medical science allowed, everything his oath demanded, and he waited. Waited for Heinrich to wake up, waited for the fever to break, waited for death or survival, waited to see which one would come first. The British soldiers grew angrier. They saw Llewellyn sitting with Heinrich, saw him caring for the enemy, saw him neglecting them. That was not true. Llewellyn treated every British soldier who needed treatment, did not neglect anyone. But perception was reality, and the soldiers perceived betrayal. Thompson came to the tent, stood over Heinrich, looked down at the unconscious German. Thompson said he should be dead by now. Llewellyn did not respond. Thompson said, "You are wasting your time, Doc. He is going to die anyway." Llewellyn said, "Maybe, but I am not going to help him die." Thompson said, "Why not? It would solve everyone's problems. The Germans would riot. We would kill them. The war would be simpler." Llewellyn looked at him. He said, "Simpler." Thompson said, "Yes, simpler. No more moral dilemmas. No more choices. Just enemies and allies. Just kill or be killed. Simple." Llewellyn said, "If you want simple, join the infantry. I am a doctor. I deal with complexity." Thompson said, "You are a fool, Doc. A naive fool. And you are going to get us all killed." Llewellyn said, "Maybe. But at least I will die knowing I tried to save lives, not destroy them." Thompson shook his head. He walked away, left Llewellyn alone with Heinrich, alone with his choice. On the third day, Heinrich woke up. His eyes opened, slowly, painfully. He looked around, saw Llewellyn. Heinrich's voice was weak, barely a whisper. He said, "Doctor." Llewellyn said, "Yes, I am here." Heinrich said, "I am still alive." Llewellyn said, "Yes, you are." Heinrich said, "How?" Llewellyn said, "You had an infection, an abscess. I operated. I drained it. You survived." Heinrich said, "You saved me again." Llewellyn said, "Yes." Heinrich said, "Why? Why do you keep saving me?" Llewellyn said, "Because that is my job." Heinrich said, "No, it is more than that. You could have let me die. You could have said the infection was too severe. You could have walked away. But you did not. Why?" Llewellyn did not answer immediately. He thought about it, thought about why he kept fighting, kept operating, kept saving this one German private. He said, "Because if I let you die, I lose everything. I lose my oath. I lose my integrity. I lose my humanity. And those are the only things I have left in this war. So I save you. Not because I care about you, not because I like you, but because saving you saves me." Heinrich stared at him. He said, "That is the saddest thing I have ever heard." Llewellyn said, "Yes, it is." Heinrich said, "I am sorry, Doctor. I am sorry my survival costs you so much." Llewellyn said, "It is not your fault. It is war's fault. It is humanity's fault. It is the fault of everyone who thinks killing is easier than saving." Heinrich said, "Will I survive?" Llewellyn said, "Yes, I think so. The infection is under control. Your body is fighting. You are strong. You will make it." Heinrich said, "And then what?" Llewellyn said, "Then I transfer you to the POW camp. Then you leave. Then my life goes back to normal." Heinrich said, "Will it go back to normal?" Llewellyn said, "No, probably not. But at least you will be alive." Heinrich said, "Yes, at least I will be alive. Thank you, Doctor, for everything." Llewellyn said, "You are welcome. Now rest. You need to heal." Llewellyn walked outside, found Mitchell. Mitchell said, "Well." Llewellyn said, "He is awake. He is stable. He will survive." Mitchell closed his eyes. Relief washed over his face. He said, "Thank God." Llewellyn said, "Yes, thank God." Mitchell said, "How long until we can move him?" Llewellyn said, 1 week, maybe 2. He needs to heal, needs to be strong enough to survive the transfer. Mitchell said, "Fine, but make it fast. The longer he stays here, the more dangerous it gets." Llewellyn said, "I know, sir." Mitchell said, "Doc, you did good work. You saved that man's life twice. That takes skill. That takes courage." Llewellyn said, "It also takes stupidity. Mitchell smiled, a rare smile. He said maybe, but it is the good kind of stupidity, the kind that makes you human. Llewellyn said, I do not feel human, sir. I feel exhausted. Mitchell said, go sleep, Doc. You earned it. Llewellyn nodded. He walked to his tent, lay down on his cot, closed his eyes, thought about Heinrich, about how close he had come to dying, about how close they had all come to catastrophe, about how one man's survival had prevented a massacre, about how fragile everything was, about how thin the line was between life and death, between peace and violence, between humanity and horror. Llewellyn thought about all of that, and then he slept. Slept for the first time in 3 days. Slept knowing that tomorrow he would wake up, and Heinrich would still be alive, and the crisis would be over, at least for now. 10 days later, Heinrich was transferred to the POW camp. He was strong enough to walk, strong enough to survive the move, strong enough to leave. Llewellyn watched him go, watched 2 British guards escort him out of the medical tent, watched him walk across the field toward the POW camp, watched him disappear behind the fence, watched the chapter close. Heinrich was gone. Llewellyn's responsibility was over. His burden was lifted. His life could return to normal. Or so he thought. The British soldiers did not forgive him. They did not forget. They saw Llewellyn as a traitor, as a Nazi sympathizer, as someone who had chosen the enemy over his own. They did not speak to him, did not acknowledge him, did not include him. Llewellyn ate alone, slept alone, worked alone. He was isolated, shunned, cast out, not officially, not formally, but effectively. The men had made their judgment. Llewellyn had saved a Nazi. That made him one of them. That made him the enemy. Llewellyn did not argue, did not defend himself, just accepted it, accepted the loneliness, accepted the silence, accepted the price of his choice. Harris was the only one who still spoke to him. Harris did not agree with what Llewellyn had done, did not understand it, but he respected it. Harris said, Doc, the men will never accept you, not after this. Llewellyn said, I know. Harris said, it does not matter that you saved hundreds of lives by keeping Heinrich alive. It does not matter that you prevented a massacre. All that matters is you saved a German, and they will never forgive that. Llewellyn said, I am not asking for forgiveness. Harris said then, what are you asking for? Llewellyn said nothing. I am just doing my job. Harris said your job cost you everything. Was it worth it? Llewellyn did not answer. He did not know. He just knew he had done what he believed was right. Whether it was worth it remained to be seen. The war ended 3 months later, May 1945. Germany surrendered. The fighting stopped. The killing stopped. The war was over. Llewellyn went home, back to London, back to his wife, back to Emma. They were waiting at the train station. Emma saw him first. She ran toward him, shouted, Daddy. Llewellyn dropped his bag, caught her, held her. She was bigger now, taller, older, 7 years old. She had grown while he was gone, had changed, but she was still his daughter, still his Emma, still his reason for coming home. Llewellyn held her, did not let go, did not speak, just held her, tried to remember what it felt like to be human again. That night Emma asked him what he did in the war. They were sitting at the dinner table, just the 3 of them. Emma said, Daddy, did you save people? Llewellyn said, yes, I saved people. Emma said, how many? Llewellyn thought about it, thought about all the soldiers he had treated, all the wounds he had stitched, all the lives he had saved. He said, I do not know. Many. Emma said, did you save bad people too? Llewellyn looked at her. He said, what do you mean? Emma said, did you save Germans? Llewellyn hesitated. Then he said, yes. I saved a German. Emma said, why? He was the enemy. Llewellyn said, because he was dying, because he asked me to help, because he had a daughter like you. Emma thought about that. She said, so you saved him because of me. Llewellyn said, yes, in a way. Emma said, "Did he live?" Llewellyn said, "Yes. He lived." Emma smiled. She said, "Then you did a good thing, Daddy?" Llewellyn did not respond. He did not know if it was a good thing. He just knew it was the right thing. And sometimes those were not the same. Llewellyn received a letter 6 months later, November 1945. The envelope was postmarked from Germany, from Berlin. Llewellyn did not recognize the handwriting. He opened it. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The letter was written in English. It said, "Dear Dr. Llewellyn, my name is Heinrich Müller. You may not remember me. I was the German soldier you operated on, the one you saved. Twice. I am writing to thank you, to tell you that I survived the war, to tell you that I made it home, to tell you that I am alive because of you. I was released from the POW camp in July. I returned to Berlin, to my wife, to my daughter Anna. She is 7 years old now, the same age as your daughter Emma. I have enclosed a photograph. It is Anna and me, taken last month. I wanted you to see what you saved. Not just a soldier, not just a life, but a father, a family, a future. You gave that to me. You gave that to Anna, and I will never forget it. I know what you risked. I know what you sacrificed. I know your own men hated you. I know you paid a price, and I am sorry for that. But I want you to know that your sacrifice mattered, that your choice saved more than just me. It saved my family. It saved my daughter's future. It saved everything. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for being a doctor when the world needed soldiers. Thank you for choosing life when everyone else chose death. Thank you for being human. With deepest gratitude, Heinrich Müller. Llewellyn read the letter 3 times. Then he looked at the photograph. It showed Heinrich, older, thinner, tired, but alive. He was standing next to a little girl, Anna. She was smiling, holding the same stuffed rabbit Llewellyn had seen in the first photograph. She looked happy, safe, loved. Llewellyn stared at the photograph, stared at Anna's smile, thought about everything that had happened, thought about the surgery, the screaming, the infection, the threats, the isolation, the cost. He thought about whether it had been worth it, whether saving one German soldier justified losing the respect of his own men, whether one life was worth everything he had sacrificed. He looked at Anna's smile, and he thought maybe it was. Maybe that smile was worth everything. Maybe giving one little girl her father back was worth being called a traitor, worth being isolated, worth being hated. Maybe that was enough. Llewellyn showed the letter to his wife, Catherine. She read it. She looked at the photograph. She said, "Robert, you saved this man's life. You saved his daughter's future. That is extraordinary." Llewellyn said, "I also lost the respect of my men, lost my reputation, lost everything I had worked for." Catherine said, "No, you did not lose everything. You kept your integrity. You kept your humanity. You kept your oath. Those are not small things. Those are everything." Llewellyn said the men do not see it that way. Catherine said the men do not matter. What matters is you did what you believed was right. What matters is a little girl has her father because of you. What matters is you saved a life when everyone wanted you to let it die. That is courage, Robert. That is honor. That is everything a doctor should be. Llewellyn looked at her. He said, "Do you really believe that?" Catherine said, "Yes, I do. And so should you." Llewellyn kept the letter, kept the photograph, put them in a drawer, did not show them to anyone else, did not talk about Heinrich, did not talk about what he had done, just kept it private, kept it quiet, kept it between himself and his conscience. He went back to work, became a general practitioner in London, treated patients, saved lives, did his job. He never spoke publicly about the war, never told the story, never sought recognition, just lived quietly, raised Emma, grew old, died in 1976. He was 68 years old. Stroke, quick, painless. He was buried in London. Catherine was there. Emma was there. Her husband, her children, Llewellyn's grandchildren. They stood at his grave, said goodbye, remembered a man who had saved lives, a man who had followed his oath, a man who had chosen humanity over hatred. After Llewellyn died, Emma found the letter, found the photograph. She read Heinrich's words, saw Anna's smile. Emma had not known about Heinrich, had not known about the surgery, had not known about the threats, had not known what her father had sacrificed. She sat down, read the letter again, stared at the photograph, thought about her father, about the conversation they had when she was 7, about how he had told her he saved a German because the German had a daughter. Emma had not understood then, had not understood what that meant, had not understood the weight of it. But she understood now. She understood that her father had risked everything to save a stranger, had been hated for it, had been isolated for it, had carried that burden silently for 30 years, and he had never complained, never regretted, never wished he had chosen differently. Emma wrote to the address on the letter. She did not know if Heinrich was still alive, did not know if the address was still valid, but she tried. She wrote, "Dear Mr. Muller, my name is Emma Llewellyn. I am the daughter of Dr. Robert Llewellyn, the man who saved your life. My father died last month. While sorting his belongings, I found your letter and the photograph. I wanted you to know that my father kept them, that he treasured them, that they mattered to him. I also wanted you to know that my father never regretted saving you. He carried the burden of that choice for 30 years. He was isolated, hated, cast out, but he never complained, never wished he had done differently, because he believed saving your life was the right thing to do. And he was right. Thank you for writing to him. Thank you for letting him know that his sacrifice mattered. It meant more to him than you will ever know. With gratitude, Emma Llewellyn." She received a reply 2 months later. It said, "Dear Emma, thank you for your letter. Yes, I am still alive. I am 70 years old now, living in Berlin. Your father saved my life, gave me a future, gave my daughter a father. Anna is 37 now, married. She has 2 children, my grandchildren. They exist because your father chose to save me. I have told them about him, about the British doctor who operated on a dying Nazi, who risked everything, who saved a stranger. They know his name. They know his story. They honor his memory. I am sorry he was hated for what he did. I am sorry he paid such a price. But please know that his choice mattered, that it continues to matter, that every day I wake up is because of him, that every moment I spend with my family is because of him, that everything I have is because of him. He gave me life. He gave me everything, and I will never forget. Please tell your children about him. Tell your grandchildren. Make sure his story is not forgotten. Make sure the world knows that one man chose humanity over hatred, chose life over death, chose mercy over war. Make sure they remember Dr. Robert Llewellyn, the man who saved his enemy, with deepest respect. Heinrich Muller." Emma kept the letters, all of them, hers, Heinrich's, her father's. She told her children, told her grandchildren, told anyone who would listen. She made sure the story survived, made sure her father's choice was remembered, made sure the world knew that one British doctor had saved a dying Nazi, had risked everything, had been hated for it, had carried that burden silently, had never regretted, had died knowing he had done the right thing. Emma made sure that story was not forgotten, made sure it was told, made sure it mattered, because it did matter, because her father had proved that even in war, humanity could survive, that even when everyone chose hatred, one person could choose mercy, that even when the cost was everything, the choice could still be right. Emma made sure the world remembered that. Remembered Dr. Robert Llewellyn, the man who saved his enemy and paid for it every day of his life.